Hi everybody, I'm Alison with Alison Kent Home Kitchen for all things about the heart of your home. And I am bringing in Chef Robin Kort. Let's see if I can spell her name correctly. Here we go. Bringing in Robin, and this is the beginning of our 4-part series on food foraging through the seasons. So we're excited. This is like number 1 of our 4-part series on winter foraging.
Yeah. I'm wearing my winter foraging sailor today.
And I'm sitting beside the fireplace in my room because I literally have no house left anywhere else to sit except like in this one little corner that's left in my house untouched by construction right now. Winter in where we live isn't very long. Mm-hmm. Do you feel like it's really just, it feels like fall normally until December, and then January, February get kind of super chilly, and then it suddenly is spring, and then you're like immediately thrown into spring.
Yep. Right.
So I don't know what happens in winter, but you seem to find some magic in those couple months.
Yeah, and I mean, for Vancouver, it is that really shrunken season. And the islands and the sort of coastal regions, but then in the interior, I don't know how many people might be listening in the interior of BC.
Loads.
Those other people, they get old and are still covered with snow, right? So I can talk a little bit about today about that sort of foraging as well. So foraging for survival. So let's say you're in the backcountry in Vancouver, right? So in the local mountains, where the snow line is higher, sort of thing, and that winter's going to stay around for longer. So I'll talk a little bit about survival food, but also as a chef, I'm all about what's the tastiest and what's the most fun to cook and all that sort of thing. So yeah, you can talk about it from different angles. I always like to talk about the zombie apocalypse and making sure people are prepared, right?
You were saying that yesterday. So we introduced this series yesterday, and we talked about your whole Swallowtail Tours company with the tours and the blog that is so full of information. I couldn't even believe it. And the secret suppers. So if anybody wants to watch that one, that's in Instagram TV. They can go back and watch that introduction. And now we're just going to talk about winter sea foraging.
Yeah. It's one of my...
I got excited about winter foraging when you said the oysters were the best and the sea creatures were at their best in winter, because that's one of my favorite things.
Yep. It's the water is, clean and clear. In the summer, you get the river runoff, which makes things muddy, right? It's a natural thing. So oysters and shellfish and stuff, everyone's eating all these things in summer because it seems like we should, but we shouldn't really. We should be eating that stuff in winter when the water quality is perfect and the oysters aren't, procreating basically. Yeah. So they're muddying the waters in multiple ways in summer, which is why, a real sort of, if you eat a lot of oysters, you really know this. Like when you eat one in summer, it's sort of like, they can be gritty or fusty or sort of like overly creamy. It's, like not fresh, like not as fresh, not as crisp. You're not getting those like cucumber notes. I just had some beautiful oysters from, actually my friend bought them on Granville Island, I think, and they were like so cucumber. I've never tasted an oyster that tasted like a slice of cucumber, like so fresh. They're really good this year.
And so oysters is something you can catch in your wading boots?
Yep. So oysters can be on any beach, basically. They can be loose, so on the sand sort of thing, and that's a really lucky and easy way to find them if you don't have like a knife or something to get them off the rock that they're sort of decided to attach to. So I have a place in Galliano, so the oystering and the shellfishing that I do around there, you have to check the DFO site first, so the Department of Fisheries site, to make sure that there's no sanitary closures and there's no red tide problems. But after you've done that, you've done your due diligence, then you're ready to go. So you can, pick them up off the beach if you find them that way. Some people avoid those because they're like, they expect them to be attached to something. So they're like, is that one dead? Or what, right?
Well, because you're used to looking for clams because you go clam digging. It's a whole thing. But you're not used to saying, oh, there's an oyster sitting right there. I guess I'll take it.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know.
Yeah, you don't know, right? So it's, so we do a lot of online foraging programs. So I have a virtual foraging for survival 2-hour session, online videos, etc. And that one I go to town on sea foraging and what precautions you have to take. For example, because red tide doesn't just happen in summer; it happens in winter as well. So, so you really do have to know, the right things to do to keep yourself safe with shellfish specifically. And really rely on that Department of Fisheries information, which you go to that site and it's like, it's just, can I say a shit show? It's crazy, right? It's like the information is there, but it's like, 5 pages deep and, under a rock basically. So yeah.
We need professionals to link us to those things. We've had to go on them a few times because my son now likes to go crabbing.
Yep.
Crab hunting.
Yep.
And I think he was once, because you did the whole thing that my husband and my son went to with was it sea foraging? But it was a summer one, I think. Anyways, after that, he's just constantly, he was looking through the pier, the posts in the pier down below, looking to scrounge up some clams or oysters or mussels or whatever. And I'm saying, I don't know, I think we should check out the red tide situation before you get too carried away. But he's he's a forager at heart. He'll be doing that kind of stuff for a long time to come. And I love how you just like put that spark in him. I knew it was a good class to send him to, but you just really created that spark for him, and he's going to be a lifelong forager now. Like, he'll just love it. I can imagine for your survival one, though, that's an indispensable class for people that hike a lot, or people that go out in the backwoods a lot, or however people go outdoors. I'm such a city person now.
Those people.
Those people that like go out of the urban areas. But it would be indispensable because it is easy to get lost or to run out of food and it's your own little personal zombie apocalypse at that point, right? Like, you have to eat to survive, and then what do you do?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and also just, as someone that, as far as sea foraging, I like to teach people what they can forage for without a boat, right? So, because it's easily accessible, and those are sort of situations you might actually be in survival wise, or if you just want to go to Fanny Bay and dig some clams up or whatever, right? There's all these sort of wonderful opportunities that are fairly close to Vancouver. And when things open up so that you can do outside group activities and stuff like that, then you're going to want to take advantage of those, because that's what we're going to be doing first, right?
Yeah. And we chatted briefly yesterday that as far as red tide and everything, the sea vegetable family is not affected the same way.
Yeah, so seaweeds aren't affected by red tide because they're not a filter feeder like a bivalve, for example, that would filter that out and then hold the toxin within its shell. So one of my favorite things to forage for is seaweeds, bull kelp. Sea lettuce is another beautiful one. It's a bright green one that you see sort of in the intertidal zone.
Yeah.
That one's great for, like, it's a gateway seaweed for people that are like suspicious of seaweed because they expect it to taste fishy or something, but fresh seaweed does not taste like that.
I would just expect it to taste salty. It's
salty, exactly. Yeah. Salty, tastes like the sea, and sea lettuce tastes the most neutral, and it's got a really nice texture, so it's got a bit of a pop. It's not slimy or weird, or it's just like I would, let's see, what would I akin it to? Even if you take a slice of carrot on a mandolin, sort of that crunch, there's like a crunch to it.
Yeah.
That makes it beautiful, and also it holds its color for chefs. So, like, if you make a risotto, I was working with a chef from Yolo that diced it into his risotto, and it's like these bright green, bursts of salty umami flavor, and they're bright green, so it's quite beautiful. So yum, making me hungry.
Well, and I don't understand, because all the sea animals are so popular, and I love all the sea animals. They're all delicious, but sea vegetables, is that a word? sea
Yep.
vegetables.
Yep.
Just, I don't think that they've really even hit their stride. And other than seaweed, I can't even think of another one, but there's probably dozens. I wait for sea asparagus to come in the markets. And I don't know if that's caught locally or if that's imported. But
locally frequently, yeah.
Is it?
Yeah.
Because so many people don't even know what that is.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so I feel like there's this whole world of sea vegetable that people could still become introduced to. And like you said, a lot of it's so easy to forage for. It's literally lining the shores and lining the rocks and everything else. And it's super healthy. I assume.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, even, if you're going for a walk along the beach near Jericho or whatever, there's like sea fennel, right? There's actually wild fennel that grows along the sea and sort of on the sandy areas there, right? And it's just like, that's just like fennel. It, you nibble, it tastes like licorice, right? So, that just simple ones like that. Just, I like to just sort of get people exploring, even if they're not gonna, eat, because BC parks, it's actually illegal to harvest from BC parks. So those are our classrooms, I like to say. Like, that's where you learn, and then you go elsewhere and you go further away, sort of thing. And then you get a more pristine environment and that sort of thing as well.
Yeah.
Right. But yeah, so sea asparagus is one of my favorites. Then sea lettuce, bull kelp, like I said, makes a great pickle. Also makes a great furikake, sort of spice mix. And then there's one more. Well, I mean, there's tons. There's wakame. There's, you could make your own nori, right? Your own sushi rolls, sort of, by just pulsing seaweed in a blender and then drying it out, right? So a bit more time consuming, but we have time now. So,
but we have nothing but time. And you had a really good salt that you had made yesterday. You were showing it. I think it was it the seaweed, because you don't need to add salt, dried?
Yep.
And sesame seeds?
Yep.
I forget. Toasted sesame seeds.
And then green Szechuan peppercorn. Yeah.
That sounds like it would be delicious on everything. And my son works at a fishmonger. We go through a lot of fish. So just to sprinkle some on, even with a dash of lemon, and you're just done. You don't even need anything else.
You don't. Or on salad. I love it in salad. Just like little olive oil, a little bit of lime, and then the furikake sort of spice mix on that. And it's like, and you don't need any salt. And it's super good for you. So amazing.
But besides because we don't get a lot of snow, so ideally we could forage also throughout your forests and meadows and everything else. I mean, we have the ranges of mountains to the north. We have the plains and the kind of flatter areas to the south, and then you can go out to the ocean west, and then we have the desert kind of area, like the Okanagan is a totally different climate. Like, we just have so many climates within a 2-hour radius of where we are. I'm sure they all have something cool in winter.
Yep, totally. I mean, the more you go sort of up in the mountain, again, then you have to dig through snow levels, right? But hopefully, that's not your situation. But, you can eat trees. That's one thing that, conifers and that sort of thing. So the conifer needles of spruce, and pine, Douglas fir, straight up fir, all of these have edible needles. So even in winter, I mean, I like them in spring because that's when the new shoots come out. So they're more tender, but you can eat them all year round. So they're full of vitamin C. And they taste like the forest, right? So I've made ice cream with those before, and it's amazing. It's like a little taste of the Pacific Northwest, right? You have that sort of, I don't know, there's something sort of rosemary-like almost of those, but better, like more interesting because you haven't had it, right? It's totally, foresty ice cream is the best.
Foresty ice cream. I could picture it with like honey or something, like a honey and...
Infuse the honey, or savory in pork. You can stuff pork or stuff chicken skin with it. The key in winter is that the needles are really hard. So you have to, again, food processor or dice them fine so that, or mortar and pestle, just to sort of break up that texture a little bit. But you could eat them if you're in a survival situation. I'd be nibbling on those for sure.
The things we didn't know. What about so these are more kind of plant-based, but I know in a lot of cultures, and I've been watching on some of the food TV things, they're getting more into eating bugs.
Oh yeah. Well,
and I've heard that that's what's in all our protein powders anyhow. It's all bug protein because they're insanely high in protein. And eventually, you know, that's going to be one of the ways we can feed the humans.
Completely. And honestly, I spend a good amount in Thailand, time in Thailand, and I've eaten almost all their bugs, and most of them were quite tasty. I'm not really into the grubs. Those were like next level for me.
The squishy, gooey, what? No.
Squishy, gooey, yeah. I mean, that's the thing is they deep fry it all, right? So it's like texturally, it's just a crunchy thing, right? Or, you know, the powder thing, right? It's just a powder. You don't even know what it is anymore. So that's you know, more accessible to North Americans anyway. But here, I mean, I did a video series once on my YouTube channel that was, Would You Eat This? Was what I called it. And I just like, I shot plants, animals, whatever I came across that people might be like, hey, you know, and one of them was a banana slug. So, because, you know, we have snails, like, you know, the red-banded snail is one of our endangered snails, so we won't be eating that one. But, you know, I always thought as a chef, I was like, oh, you know, escargot, right? Like, do we have a local escargot? Does anyone eat these things? And I did a good amount of research. I always reference Nancy Turner, who's one of the biggest sort of knowledge keepers of that traditional information for food, and there was no record of anyone really eating snails here. So I didn't eat the snail, but the banana slug wasn't eaten, but it was used as an antiseptic and like a numbing thing. So if you had to pull a tooth or something like that, you could use some of that slime that would numb out your tooth, basically, right?
That's strong. If it's numbing you out from a tooth pull, that's a strong slug.
Yeah. So, different uses, right? As far as bugs on our end. Crickets would be great, though. I do like deep fried crickets, because usually, especially in Thailand, they put like a little bit of sort of salty chili and then lime over them, which makes everything good.
It's almost like a bug French fry at that point. It's like a spicy kind of like crispy bug French fry. And my son, when we were going down to California every year, there's a place in Pismo Beach that was like a candy store, but it was all bugs. And my son would get a bag every time we went through. He'd get a bag of crickets, and he'd get the chocolate covered ones. And then I didn't quite understand it because he'd suck the chocolate off and then still eat the bug. And I'm like, the whole point of the chocolate is to hide the bug. But yeah, are there any kind of local crustaceans, or basically the bugs of the sea?
Yeah, exactly. So actually in the virtual foraging survival online course, I did a lot because, you know, I have a place on Galliano. So, and when I was doing that sort of research into traditional, you know, eatings along the seashore, there's limpets, right? So that's the triangular half shape, right, that stick to the rock. So I ate limpets. I have recipes for limpets. That's a traditional food that we don't eat, right?
It makes me think of like a snail, like how you would eat escargot. You would eat limpets in like a nice garlic butter. And
yeah, exactly. And like sea snails as well. So whelks. So the one that we have near Galliano, there's a sort of an orange shelled one that's a frilled sea snail. And they all have this little foot that's sort of the door of their house. And the foot is like actually hard, like shell-like. And it has a braided edge that it uses to scrape through mussels, because it actually is a carnivore. So you have to cut that little, you know, you don't eat that part of it, but you throw them in water, and they're actually super tasty, because sea snails are, you know, historically, they used to be prawns, right? So you're getting sort of a prawny, nice texture, and, you know, really, really great seafood, basically, that we ignore. Limpets, not so much, though. They're kind of they're just like
So like there's no amount of garlic that will save that limpet.
Not for me. I mean, I have to do more experimentation, but they're an accessible survival food, because they're in the upper intertidal zone. So then you know, it's quite easy to go along And okay, do you want me to tell you how to? Did you get this in the sea foraging tour that you what
Well,
limpets?
I don't know because I sent my son and my husband to that one, so I wasn't there. And then he just came back with like crabs in his head. He just loved everything to do with crabs from that moment on.
One of the crab.
So I'm sure you talked about many other things, but that was kind of his personal takeaway. We spent
His
many
focus,
weekends on that dock after that
which is
class,
nice.
which is not a bad way to
Okay.
spend the day. And I mean, to be able to hang out with your teenager, he's stuck there for the whole day watching his crab line. So, I mean, he has to talk to you and hang out, right?
Good trick.
Good trick. And like you said yesterday, like foraging and just being out and with your family, with your kids, like it's social and it's kind of
Yeah.
it's like a treasure hunt, right? Like you're going through, whether you're going tidal or whether you're going forest or whatever, or through like the fields for some of the, I guess more the flowers and stuff would be in the spring, summer.
Yep. Oh,
But
well,
whatever kind of outdoorsy thing you're doing, you're just kind of doing it together and it's like a little cool treasure hunt. And I guess now with
yep.
your phone, there's probably a lot of apps where you can double check that you're not about to poison yourself. No?
There's great apps. There's iNaturalist. That's not bad. But you still need to know what you're doing, right? Because iNaturalist, for example, it's a lot of amateurs that are just like thinking they're naming what they're finding, right?
Yeah.
So you need to be able to sort of sort that out as well. There's a
We
really
need
good
your course first. We have to take your courses
yes.
and then we will
Yeah.
know what we're doing.
Yeah.
Well,
A base.
I've done the first 2 days of the mushroom one and I've already learned a ton of stuff. I didn't even realize how much stuff was in my own backyard. So
Edible weeds, right? That's what's coming up in winter right now for Vancouver is like, little bits of dandelion, watercress. I was harvesting just like last week when there was no snow. Yeah, and your seaweeds and even a few mushrooms, like you're saying, like hedgehog mushrooms do come up. Fall oyster mushrooms occasionally come up. Oyster mushrooms come up early spring, so, you might be running into those depending on where you are.
well, we'll get our spring workshop. We set it for May, I think.
Yep.
Our spring workshop for that kind of food. And you have, for a lot of the stuff that you have already foraged for and got your classes and stuff, you've backed it up with a lot of recipes.
Yeah. And that's the fun part for me for sure is just, I like the survival stuff because it's good to know. But as a chef, I just don't, mostly I don't care unless it tastes really good. But so for example, like roots is something that you should be looking for in the winter, right? Both for survival, but for tastiness. And one of my favorite roots is cattail roots. So the cattail, like a bulrush, people are sort of used to seeing bulrushes with the seed pod head, the brown one, right? And you can see it at, again, Jericho. So it's fun to walk around there and just see the different native plants that you can find around there that you can eat. But cattails, you can harvest the roots. You can actually eat the shoots. You can eat the seed heads, the pollen, the whole plant is edible. And the root as well as the shoot tastes a lot like cucumber. It seems to be a cucumber theme today. Yeah, it's like crunchy and just very similar to cucumber.
Because once you start to recognize a few things, knowing what to do with them is the other half of the battle.
Yes,
So
exactly. And learning
learning
their poisonous lookalikes.
Yes. Yes.
If they, yeah.
Well, and I think throughout your courses too, you also are clear about the safe ones to start with to get into your comfort zone. So just pick like one or two per season that you can maybe find a local source for. You can get comfortable with it. The poisonous lookalikes, and maybe learn one or two recipes, because it's one thing to say, oh yeah, I've got dandelions out in the yard all the time, I should learn how to cook them. But unless you know one or two really good recipes for that, you're just never going to forage it again, right? So you have to be able to like work with the ingredient. You have to be pretty adventurous.
Yep.
I'll bet.
Totally.
It's an adventure.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, if you're someone that likes to cook, it's a new dimension, right? Because everyone has access to all the things in the grocery store, but you don't. And, for me growing up cooking, it's like that was the interesting part. It was like I grew up in the Pacific Northwest. I have to know what the plants that are traditional here taste like to develop, you know, the cuisine that is here, right? And there's tons of chefs around town that are doing that are incorporating sea asparagus and seaweeds and that sort of thing. But yeah, it's really quite fun. And the invasive weeds is a really good one too, environmentally, right? Because then, you know, that's an extremely sustainable plant. And, you know, there's tons of them, so you can harvest lots. And as long as, you know, the soil quality is good, then, you know, it's good to go. And dandelion, nettles, those are two of the things that are really, really good for you that you should be harvesting more of for your health. Very easy to identify. You know, that's a nice thing about dandelion is in our specific region, there aren't ones that are deadly poisonous that look like them. There's lots of lookalikes to dandelion that aren't dandelion, but they're not deadly poisonous. So at least, you know, it's better, right? So it's good to learn that look alike it still. You want to target down on what the plant is, and make sure you have it. But it's a really good, easy one to start with. And nettles is kind of an obvious one because, you know, if you touch it and it burns and it looks like nettle, it's nettle. On gloves.
Nettle. Well, I'm excited. So for people that are tuning in and watching this, they can find your website at swallowtail.ca, and then the Instagram is Swallowtail Tours.
Yeah, the Instagram is Swallowtail Tours, and then the YouTube channel is Swallowtail Culinary Adventures.
Culinary Adventures, because it is an adventure. Well, I love that we're like breaking this down, because I like it when things are also kind of bite-sized, so I can come online and take one of your programs and figure out one or two things to hunt for over the winter, and then expand that into spring. And then by time, you know, and then some of the seasons kind of here where we are, they kind of flow between each other a little bit too. So that's kind of cool. And like you said, you can always go, if you're craving some of the cooler plants, just go up the mountain a little bit, or go out to the desert kind of areas a little bit towards the Okanagan. And what's your, I think I asked you yesterday, what's your favorite season for foraging?
Yeah, fall for mushrooms, because they're just so weird and wonderful. And I mean, that's a nice thing about foraging, especially mushrooms, is it really slows you down. So I find it very meditative. You never, you know, it's not like you have to be an athlete to forage, because you don't go far, because your eyes are on the ground. You're really looking at what's there, and you find all these like crazy wild things that you wouldn't usually find if you were on a hike in the area, because then you have a destination. You're not really even looking, right? So with mushrooms and with plants, it's just like you're forced to identify them, right? So you have to analyze them on that level, and it's very calming.
I like it. We're going to get to the rest of the seasons in our series.
Sounds good.
Okay, well, thank you very much for introducing us to winter foraging, and I look forward to the next one.
Awesome. Thanks,
Talk
Alison.
to you soon. Bye.
Bye.